it was very gradual. It was very incremental over those 4 days. There was no abrupt jolt. There was no trying to pound something in my head. There was no opening up a manual and going through a step process. It was sitting in a circle and experiencing. And slowly the understanding took root. So when the immersion ended, I packed my bags and went home. I did something that I never did before prior to that, though. When I was on the airplane back to Canada, I read a whole book. Prior to that, I didn't read books. I would attempt to read books. I would try to read books, but I didn't willingly sit down to ever read a book. And as I read this book, what occurred was that I remained silent. When I got back to Canada that week, I remember going right back to work, but also being silent. I didn't have too much to say and I didn't have too much to think about. And one night I had fallen asleep on my couch in the living room of my condo. And when I woke up in the morning, I saw the tree that was sitting just out the front window. And I stared at it. I saw the branches, and I followed the branches down to the trunk. And I saw the way the trunk went down into the ground. And I just sort of imagined the way the roots in the tree went into the ground and sort of made up the as above, so below of this tree, this form. And then there was just a picture in my mind of the tree sort of impressing itself upon my chest. And in that moment, I had an insight about something. I had an insight about spiritual energy and divine mind. I saw that the way the tree was growing did it by way of an intelligence. But I didn't see it like that before. I didn't see a tree as containing an energetic life force that didn't need to be told how to grow. It just grew by way of an intelligence. And it was the same way that a flower pitches towards the southern hemisphere and follows the arc of a sun. It does this by way of some type of universal intelligence, some type of universal mind. I thought to myself, I need to go down to Wascana Park. I need to see this in action. So I got in my car, I drove down to Wascana Park, and I walked onto this island that has a little waterfall on it, and I looked at the entire expanse of the lake. When I took a breath in, it was like breathing in the expanse. It was something that I was experiencing internal. And as I took a breath in, I experienced the entire expanse in me because my senses were an internal experience. I realized everything outside of me is an internal experience within me. And the sky is like this thing called consciousness. And the birds flying around are like this thing called thought and mind. The way that the birds fly in a V, they're held together by a universal intelligence, mind. When I saw a bird sort of fly across me, it buzzed me. I thought, man, that happens just like my thoughts. There's like a thought that comes in out of nowhere and it passes through my mind. It stays for a while. I can choose to attach to it or not choose to attach to it. And something happens as a result of that. And then eventually it dissipates. And it had been what I attached myself to throughout my entire life. The constant revisiting of traumatic events that happened in my life, living from the space of what happened to me and who I was, always living from that space and the thinking that arose from it, realizing that I'm living the feeling of my thinking moment to moment. That when someone did something to me in my life, I would have a feeling about it. And so much of the shit that happened to me when I was a little kid, I carried forward.